Ladies and gentlemen, from the Microsoft Theater here in downtown Los Angeles, brought to you by Shawn Porter Promotions.
Stoppages for Javante.
Okay.
I picked stoppages for Tank, Benavidez, and Montius.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Montius.
All three teams.
I was gonna ask, can I pick it up and put it on top?
Oh yeah.
Who is he fighting?
Power, the white kid from Australia, with basic.
And you think it'll be out of the way?
Let's take a look.
Oh yeah, Pyro. Yeah.
My kid's basic.
Yeah, it is in the way. Just barely.
Just barely.
Let me just use.
You like it?
Alright, that's you. And Paulie, zoom in Paulie just a little bit. let's do a sound check real quick. Shawn,
Yep, you got me? How am I sounding?
alright,
1,
sounds
2, 3,
good.
4.
Paulie,
Check, microphone check. Check, check, check. Mic check. How's it sound? Check, check.
sounds good.
All right.
Let me get the boom mic.
Where Dane at? My boy Antt on the show, he couldn't grab you. I was like, I don't want nobody else to grab him. My dad actually got his car stole this week. Here. His car stealing problem here. So he been dealing with that a lot. My dad emotionally unstable right now. Leave him alone.
They steal cars here. I mean, New York has a problem right now.
Yeah, yeah,
Here it's bad.
yeah,
Wow, bro, that's crazy.
yeah.
Okay.
So the one
Microsoft Theater here in downtown Los Angeles. Brought to you by Shawn Porter Promotions. Live from Los Angeles, it's time for the main event of the evening.
Okay. We on? I want to thank you guys for, first of all, subscribing and coming on over here and checking out my guest today. Excited to speak to this young but older man than I. A good guy that I didn't always know was a good guy until we started doing some work together. So, without further ado, welcome to the PorterWay Podcast for the first time. Certainly not the last, because I'm gonna pull you back out here again.
Thanks, champ.
Paulie Malignaggi.
How are
Magic
you, man?
Man.
Yeah, how's it going,
Yeah.
man? Thanks for having me, man.
It's great,
good.
man. I'm super thrilled to have you here, and super thrilled how I got you here.
Yeah.
I mean, you answered. You said, yeah, no problem, no
Yeah.
problem. And I just thank you for making this so easy.
No, of course, man. We make it work, man.
Yeah,
One
thank
way or
you
the
for
other, we
making
make it
this
work.
so
You know, we
easy.
make schedules work. That's all it is, man.
Yeah. Am I good to lean back? Am I good? Yeah, I like it. To get this thing going, man, I let's start there. Magic Man. Where did that come from?
Magic Man came from Lou DiBella, who was my first promoter. I didn't. When I was younger, you know, I was really flamboyant. I'm like really kind of out there. You know, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, at times it still comes out kind of excited. You know,
Yeah.
and
At
I was
times.
just I had to have a nickname. You know, I was
Yeah.
like, but you know, you got to be given a. I mean, I feel like some guys give themselves a nickname, but
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
I don't feel like it's right. I feel like somebody has to give you that
For
nickname.
sure.
You know. So we were trying to figure out a nickname, and I'm like, you know, you guys got to figure out a nickname. And there was a press conference. I think it was my second or third pro fight. I was on the undercard. And when he announced me to the media, he was like, I present to you, you know, Paulie the Magic Man Malignaggi. And it stuck. Because there was a famous, not a famous writer, but he was a very, an award-winning writer in the New York Daily News called Vic Ziegel. He passed away now, but he was a big sports writer in the New York Daily News. And he was at that press conference because that card was a 9/11 benefit. It was right after 9/11.
Wow.
And I remember talking to Vic Ziegel after the press conference, you know, sitting down with him. And I was, at that point, I'm 20 years old. I'm like talking a mile a minute.
Getting everything.
Yeah, talking a mile a minute and just turned pro, really. And everything I said was man at the end of it. Like, yo, you know what I mean, man? And, you know, okay, man. And so the next day, his headline, because LaBella had introduced me as Paulie the Magic Man Malignaggi, the next day his headline was, once Golden Boy, because I had won a bunch of New York Golden Glove titles. Once Golden Boy, now he's Magic, comma, man.
Yeah.
And because I would say man, and
Yeah.
it kind of stuck with it. And so he kind of leaned it in with the way I was talking, plus
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, it stuck, you know. So
Did you feel like you lived up to what that name
I mean,
was, you know?
I just felt like it was a cool nickname. You know, it's like, all right. I knew guys had it before me. I knew Antonio already had it.
I was about to ask, yeah.
Marlon Starling had it before Antonio. You know, so. And everybody has their reasoning to have it. For me, I think if they just could because it was with an M and Malignaggi's with an M, you know. And I was always kind of try to be a tricky fighter and whatnot. I think Orlando had Antonio had it because he's from Orlando and has the Magic Kingdom. Marlon's so old, much older. I don't know why he had it. I never asked him about it. You know?
I'm surprised you don't know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I don't know the. You know why he has winning game Magic?
No, absolutely not. No. But you seem to be kind of an encyclopedia.
I've only met Marlon once. So
yeah,
I didn't know. I didn't
good
get to talk
dude,
to him. Yeah.
good guy. It's the phrase is boxing finds you, you don't find it.
Yeah.
But realistically, you found boxing, right?
Yeah. It was. I didn't think. It's funny because if you would have told me even a year before, I started boxing, if you're gonna become a pro boxer, I wouldn't have thought it. I would.
Midnight.
You know, I liked some of the fights. You know, my family used to watch the fights. You know, my uncles, my grandfather. You know, everybody liked the fights, but I didn't think I was gonna be a fighter or a boxer. You know, it wasn't something I had planned to do.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of rolled in. You know, it was like my grandfather, my uncle took me to the gym. My grandfather had my uncle take me to the gym, and then I liked it. It was competitive, but I felt like it was something that it found, you know, you said it finds you. It felt like it just felt like it fit. And I didn't want to get in trouble. You know, before I was kind of getting a little bit of trouble, being a little bit immature.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get in trouble because I didn't want to lose my ability to go to the gym. I didn't want it taken away from me, you know, and so I just kind of just focused so much on it, and you know, I said I kind of became immersed in it, you know.
Did it kind of make sense like overnight to you, or did it take some time?
Here's what I realized. You know, I was always a pretty good athlete. I was always very fast runner, you know, just quick in general, you know, playing sports. And fighting, you don't really realize it's a sport until you do it, you know, like, because, you know, I mean, you can get into street fights. It's not a sport, you know, you can get, you know, wrestle match with your friends. It's not a sport. You can do a lot, but you always think of other sports as a sport. Once I started boxing and I started learning a little bit, I started realizing, my natural quickness can apply here. You know, like my good leg. I always had good legs. My leg. So I was like, this is kind of like it's a sport. I mean, it is a sport, but you never think about it. From the outside looking in,
because it's fighting.
You just look at fighting as something different, you know. So until you're doing it, and then I was like, I can use a lot of my natural ability in making myself better at this, you know. And
that's
so
why I'm sorry to cut you off, but when you see have you ever been around people and you talk about the weigh-in or you talk about the face-off and somebody jumps in and say, did somebody get hit?
Yeah.
And they be like, no, hit. It's like, whatever then. Yeah. Like, because in their minds, they don't connect to it being a sport. In their minds, they need the pushing. They need the roughhousing.
And that's the thing. I think until you do it or until you follow it at least really hardcore, like, you know, I wasn't hardcore as a kid. Dude, Mike Tyson, obviously, we knew him. I grew up, I feel like the year I'm born is like a good year to be a Mike Tyson fan, because just when you're learning a lot of things, Mike Tyson's coming into his own, you know. So I was 7, 8 years old when Mike Tyson was really like the biggest thing on the planet, you know. So, you know, obviously I like that, you know. I like boxing, but it wasn't hardcore like that until I started doing it. And you know, I remember I liked Arturo Gatti before I started boxing. He was Italian, you know. But it wasn't like a hardcore thing, you know. And then when I started boxing, you know, you start to apply these little things, you know, like it's a sport. You can apply it different ways, you know. You start learning it. You start having a passion for it. I don't think you can get good at anything unless you have a passion for it, unless you're enthusiastic about it.
Of course.
And so I was really enthusiastic about it. You know, the competitive aspect of it made me feel some importance, you know, like, because at that age, I was, like I said, I was getting in trouble. And it was, you know, it was a confidence builder.
Finally gave people a reason to smile at you.
It gave me a reason to feel good when I walk into a room, you know, because there was a point in my life, you know, where I got kicked out of my mom's house. I wasn't really doing good in school. I ended up getting kicked out of school too. And so, you know.
High school.
Yeah, high school. And I wasn't really, it's funny, you ever see, you're young, but you ever seen the show Welcome Back, Kotter?
I know of it. Yeah.
Okay. The opening credits is my high school.
Yeah.
So funny. Of all the blocks in New York City. That's my high school. So anyway, that's the school I got kicked out of.
That's my high school. You didn't graduate, right?
No, I didn't graduate. No. But I went to it, and
wow.
But yeah. So like boxing all of a sudden gave me a reason to like feel important. Like, yo,
Yeah.
you start doing good.
Yeah.
And you know, you're coming home from the gym and you're like, yo, I'm getting good. And I can remember my family wasn't like too confident in me doing it because I never applied myself in anything before. They just wanted me to stay out of trouble.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah,
That's
because
kinda funny.
they put me to the gym because once I got kicked out of school, they didn't want me to hang around like on the street. Like,
Yeah.
because that was this kid gonna do, you know, all day long, you know.
But nobody's plan or mindset was for you to compete.
I don't think they thought I would ever be disciplined enough
Just
to do
wanted
it.
you to
Yeah.
get off the
They
streets.
just wanted me to
and
have a hobby
be
that
busy.
was be busy,
Yeah.
be productive.
Yeah.
I don't think they thought I could be disciplined enough to actually go for it like that. You
Yeah.
know, because my uncle had messed around with it a few years before. He knew how hard it was, and he told me this is hard. You know.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But I don't know. I think my mentality just changed once I realized I liked it. I didn't like school. I didn't like that. I was unhappy at the time, but I got to the gym and I liked it. I liked the people there. I liked the competitive. It just at the time it fit. It was the right fit for me. It was what I needed.
What was it
you know?
though? You think? Well, like, what do you think it was?
I don't know, man. It was like, I think it just gave me confidence, man.
Yeah.
It gave me confidence. I was learning, and then like I said, my family have a faith in me, you know, like that. So I
bet
get
it was-
home.
It
Go ahead.
was you found something that you could control.
Yeah.
That's probably what it was.
And I didn't want to lose it. You know, before I didn't care if I got in trouble because I wasn't really confident about anything anyway. I was like, I don't care if I get in trouble. You know, what's the worst they could do? You can't take nothing away from me that I don't care about nothing right at that point in my life, you know. I was just kind of, you know, like I said, I got kicked out of home, kicked out of school, so you just kind of lost. So nothing's really like, you don't think anything's gonna stick with you, you know. So you don't care if nothing sticks with you. But all of a sudden in boxing, in the gym, I don't want to get in trouble. I want to go here. I want to come here every day.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be anywhere else. I don't want to put myself in a situation where it prevents me from coming here.
Right.
You know, so it was cool and like I said, it just grew confidence. But of course, my family just thought I was, you know, eventually gonna quit. I would be coming home and I would talk about like, you know, I learned this or I'm getting good. And they were like, yeah, all right. Yeah. They were like, yeah, all right. The bag don't hit you back, man. All right, yeah.
Did you play soccer?
I played a little soccer. My mom never let me play organized soccer because my father was a lower level pro soccer player in Italy.
Oh wow.
And yeah, I think that's where I get my athletic genes.
Yeah.
And they had a bad divorce, real bad divorce. And I think she blamed a lot of him being a pro athlete on it.
Yeah.
You know, so she thought like, I mean, again, it's a woman thing, man. You know,
Yeah,
like
yeah. She didn't want you connected
She
to
didn't
it.
want me connected to sports.
Yeah.
And it was kind of, I feel like that was in some way responsible for me. Because I feel like if I would have played sports growing up, because I was always at the park and pick up games, and I was always playing.
Yeah.
And I was always very athletic. But I think that if I would have been on something kind of organized sport, I would have maybe gotten in less trouble growing up. You know, I would have had a better path. But then maybe I wouldn't have boxed. So you know what? All's well that ends well. You know.
Obviously, you know, and like, you know, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking to myself, like, that's one of the first things you do with the kid that has a lot of energy and is somewhat out of control. You put him into an organized situation. It can be a painting class. It can be playing an instrument. A lot of times, not all the time, but you're looking for what's that thing that's going to suppress and pull down that energy. You know what I mean? So I think that, you know, in hindsight, not allowing you to do other things allowed you to get in enough trouble so that you could find the thing that you ultimately
I'll tell you
loving.
what, by the time I started boxing, there was I don't think I'm a naturally angry person. Like, I feel like it's funny because my brother, he's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, and he was always more temperamental than me as kids. He's only 2 years younger than me. And it's funny, when my sister was getting married, my sister's the youngest out of us, and her husband goes, you know, people ask me all the time, aren't you worried her brother's a boxer? And he goes to me, he goes, I'm more worried about the other brother. Because my brother is more temperamental than me. I did not grow up really that temperamental. But by the time I started boxing, I was an angry person, you know. And so I think that connection, you know, athleticism, anger. Because, bro, these days, you know how it is when you start boxing. So if you start boxing late, you know, the sparring's already hard. I don't know how it is to box as an 8-year-old. I don't know how hard the sparring's are.
Not too bad. Not too bad.
When you start boxing at 16,
you
get your ass kicked.
You get thumped.
Because you're boxing guys who hit already. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so, you know, I had to have a certain mindset to go back and want it. And it wasn't like, I don't want to go back. It was like, man, I got to get good enough to beat this guy's ass, man. I would get like real competitive with it. You know? Like I would come home like man, I gotta get good enough to beat this guy. I can't let this guy, like, I can't go in the gym and this guy just feels like he's better than me. You know what I mean? Like, it was at that time, you know?
Yeah.
But that gym competitiveness, because I have to say, I don't know what did you grow up in a PAL? Did you start boxing in the gym?
My dad had all of the gyms that we were at, yeah.
But I feel like for me,
but we always had kids coming in.
Yeah, that aspect of competitiveness. I learned to box in Gleason's gym, and I tell people, I don't think if the gym was not as competitive as it was, that I would have got to that level. You know, that gym was so good at that time. Now it's more like a white collar gym because it's an expensive area. I don't think it's going to produce another world champion again. But at the time, it had produced a lot of world champions. I would be shocked if Gleason produced another world champion because that area became so rich and upscale.
Yeah.
But at the time, Gleason's, you know, in the history of it, had produced a lot of champions. And at the time I started boxing, it was still a rundown area, not gentrified yet, and a lot of good fighters would train there. So, you know, it was, I mean, I remember a year after I started, not even a year after I was already boxing with Junior Jones. He was preparing for Eric Morales, you know what I mean? And, you know, I mean, I was getting my ass whooped, don't get me wrong, but I was going there. And I'm starting my competitive aspect of my amateur career as a novice. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't care how many fights these guys have in the JOs. I mean, I may have not had JO fights, but I'm sparring with Junior a couple times a week. In my mind, there was a confidence builder, whatever it was. You know, whatever convinces you, because, you know, you got to also have that brainwash in your head, too.
Were you 15, 16 when you started?
I was 16, but by the time I had my first amateur fight, I was 17.
17 when you had your first amateur fight?
I started boxing. I still remember, it's funny, I remember the first day I stepped into the gym because it's such a big week in boxing. I stepped into the gym. My first day training in Gleason's gym was June 26, 1997. And the only reason I remember the day is because 2 days later was the bite fight. June 28th, Saturday. So I started boxing Thursday. That's the only reason I remember it. The day. The Saturday is the Holyfield Tyson 2 bite fight. And the only reason I remember it because the next week is my first full week training. And the next week, being that Gleason's is such a famous gym, all kinds of newscasts were there. Because Mike Tyson and biting was like the big thing. I mean, all the news was there. And for me, I'm fresh kicked out of high school from the neighborhood,
like, and I'm like to see.
And I just watched this fight, and I just started. I mean, literally, like in the mirror, like throwing like small. Like, and now, like the next week, these cameras. I'm like, yo, this place is crazy. You know what I mean? This place, and you know, like, you know how they take like film, like for a background film, like they gotta show some people hitting the bag, and then the reporter. They got me. I got on one of the newscasts hitting the bag. You know, so I was like, you know, again, I was smitten.
Were you in the gym like?
I mean, I was like, yo, this is crazy. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was like a regular thing at that point, but it wasn't. But nonetheless, it was because it was the week after Tyson.
But that was where the bug came from.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I was like, this place is crazy, you know?
You're like literally blessed.
So like the timing also came in. Yeah, the timing came in. Then I remember a month and a half in, Mitch Green comes in the gym. And he's got a bunch of cameras on him too. I think he'd won a lawsuit with Tyson. I don't know, man. It was years after he got hit. I mean, Mitch and Mike fought in the street years before.
Right.
But he comes in the gym, and he's got all these cameras. You know, the old school big cameras, right? They're following him in the gym, backing up, and he's coming in the gym. And I never saw Mitch before. It's not like he was a regular in Gleason's. But he comes in the Gleason's, and he's yelling. You know, Mitch was real animated, and he's calling Mike Tyson's a sissy. With the Jerry curl and his toothpick. And Mike Tyson sits and he's throwing these, and I'm like, this place is whacked out, man. This place is crazy.
It's like, but it was almost like that you were born
like a cartoon, you know.
In that though, you know what I mean. So like when we see Paulie, you've always been known as being probably one of the most animated boxers, obviously of our generations, but of a lot of generations. You were always animated. You were always you knew exactly where the camera was. You had the right delivery every time.
Because you know what it was too, man. Some of it also ended up becoming that. Wow, I got good at something. I was never good at anything. You know, I had a teacher, and I you know what? Like, people would look at this experience and say, "Oh, that teacher's messed up." I don't look at that teacher messed up because I know who I was at the time. The teacher was talking about what we're gonna do when we get older, and you know, career-driven days or something like that, whatever it was. And I hadn't done the work. I was chatting with my friend in the middle of class, and he saw I wasn't paying attention, and he goes, "You see, Paul, you know, the teachers called me Paul at the time. Paul, he's gonna major in, would you like fries with that?" You know, and I thought it was laughing. I was laughing. To me, it was funny. Like I wasn't. But that goes to show you, at point probably what I felt deep inside about myself. Like, I wasn't even offended. I was like, just thought I was laughing about it. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
But, you know, you look back, and I don't even blame him, because honestly, at that point, I probably did look like I was headed for that direction, you know? But I started to, you know, again, the cameras there, cameras everywhere. I started to think, man, a lot of these MFers are going to see me on TV one day and be like, well, is that the same kid? Can I possibly be the same kid? You know, like, a lot of, I might not know, but, you know, I'm going to come across their TV screen one day and they're going to know, you know? So a lot of that also started to become a little bit of a motivation.
Hold that thought. We're going to come back to that. Right. Move on. You start boxing. A lot of guys in New York area that are, you know what I mean? They're already there. And it's like you got to find your way to even get to where they're at. Well, you know, kind of talk about.
I'll tell you what it is. Some people, like I remember asking my uncle, because he did it for like a year, and I was like, why did you stop after a year? And he said, well, I saw Alex Stewart hitting the bag. My uncle was a big guy, and he goes, I saw Alex Stewart hitting the bag. Alex Stewart was training Gleason's. He goes, I saw Alex Stewart hitting the bag, and I was just like, wow. I was like, I could never do that. I'd get to that level. And I started thinking to myself, you know, you can't compare yourself the first year in the gym, compare yourself to world champions. You know, you're not at that level. You're not supposed to be at that level. So you got to set small goals on the way to big goals, right? So the big goal, obviously, you hope to one day become a world champion.
But I got to pause you. That was your mindset? When I 17 years old?
I tell you when I realized I was getting pretty good. I was getting decent. I had no fights yet. I had but I was getting decent. I could see my ability but I was a natural athletics. My natural athleticism was applying. I was making a lot of mistakes. I would pull back a lot. I remember like I would but my natural legs were okay. You know, like I was getting in 5-6 months I did good. I go to my first live boxing match on December 19th. I remember all these dates because they're key dates. December 19th, 1997. And it was Kevin Kelly against Nassim Hamed. I go to the Garden. And even this is a funny story about this fight too. At this point now, I am trying to stay on the straight and narrow. Bro, in high school, me and my friends used to rob kids' beepers or beat them up for their beepers and whatnot, and then, you know, sell them off and make some pocket money. Now, I was going to do deliveries. My uncle had a pizzeria. I would do deliveries. He wouldn't pay me. He's like, I ain't paying you. He's like, you can get the tip. You can get the tips. And I was like, all right, I'll just do it for the tips. You know, just have some pocket money. So now I was trying to make some pocket money for myself. And so I saved up. I saw the newspaper. At the time, the fights were the newspaper advertisements, Daily News, and it was $25 was the cheapest ticket. So I said, 25. Oh yeah, say 25. Bro, I get enough for 2 tokens, which were $1.50 each. At the time, they had tokens for the trains, the subway. Now they have cards. 2 tokens and $25. That's all I got on me. And I call a couple of friends. They're like, we're doing, you know, Saturday night. They wanted to do whatever. So I'm like, whatever. I'm going to this fight. I'm not missing this fight. I'm going by myself. I take the train to Manhattan, to Madison Square Garden. My 2 tokens, one for going, one for coming back. Got $25. I get to the front desk, get to the window. The cheapest ticket, $25, and there's a $2 surcharge at the window. The $2 surcharge, and so the lady sees like that. I was like, I don't know. She must have seen it in my face. I was so excited, and then all of a sudden I was like, that's all I got, you know. And I'm like, luckily when I'm 16, 17, I look like I'm 13, you know, so that maybe helped me too, you know. So she sees this reaction. She looks at her superior or whatever, and she slides the ticket under the window. She slides it to me, you know. And that's it. I started up in the nosebleeds. And Kevin was training in Gleason's for the fight, you know. So I went there rooting for Kevin Kelly, you know. And the entire atmosphere of the night. I mean, bro, you want to talk about 6 degrees of separation? Ricky Hatton fought a 4-rounder on that undercard. I fought Ricky Hatton in Madison Square in Las Vegas 11 years later. Isn't that crazy? I would never. And it's funny, but one thing, I'll tell you what. One thing that made me become real flashy. I don't remember watching Ricky on that undercard, but you know what I remembered on that undercard that also became world champion? Joan Guzman.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I remember Joan Guzman is because he had yellow hair.
Oh, okay.
So that was one of the reasons, because you watch a bunch of fights. You know,
was he in New York at that point?
He was just starting to come in New York. I think he'd won because John was a Pan Am Games gold medalist, and I think he'd been to the Olympics, and he was a wild fighter, you know, too. But he had that yellow hair, and I remember I saw the name, you know. So that was, again, all these things, I'm taking notes in my mind, you know?
Yeah.
And the Prince Ahmed walkout, I mean,
Uh,
the Prince Ahmed walkout, the crowd was going crazy. And
was
then
he
it's,
on the? Was he on the?
he
in the
was on
cage?
the walkway. The walkway
Okay.
down. He had this like a plank. He was walking down. He was shadow boxing. He was dancing behind a shadow. And so you just saw his shadow dancing.
Yeah.
And this reggae music was for Kevin too. Everybody's anti Nassim Hamed. But I watched this fight. One of the best fights you'll watch. I'm sure you've seen it. I'm sure you remember it. I mean, that's also the luck of the draw.
That's one of the first fights that I remember seeing as a kid.
That's also the luck of the draw. It's like I go to I'm on the train home, and I said, I gotta do this. I gotta do this. I gotta feel this.
Yeah.
What did I just watch, man? What did I just feel like? Again, I'm somebody, not a really confident person, somebody who kind of lost that moment, and all of a sudden I'm in this boxing gym every day. I'm picking it up. Now I'm seeing the competitive aspect of it. I'm feeling like and now I saw this, and I'm like, I've got to do this.
Yeah.
I was like, I've got to feel that. I've got to feel that. I've got to be in that ring.
It gives me sense. It was like you found purpose.
It allowed me, all's well that ends well. If I don't go through some of the things I go through, I don't think I have the wherewithal to go through what it takes to be a fighter. You know, because nobody was pushing me. I didn't have like you have your father pushing me. My family never thought I would really take it that serious. So they never ever pushed me like, oh, you got to do more running, you got to do more of this. Yeah. It just became me. I saw in the gym, I had to get better than that guy. Or this guy got the better of me in sparring. I got to get better than this guy. I got to get better than this guy. To the point where I'm sparring world champions. And I was like, the competitive aspect of the gym helped me so much because there's always better and better fighters. You know what I mean? And you got to be up on your P's and Q's all the time. And you got to get up to that level all the time. And all of a sudden, if you're one of the better fighters in a gym like Gleason's gym, you might end up becoming one of the better fighters in the world. And so little by little, it got me there.
Did you ever see that lady that let you in?
I don't know.
On your way out?
Nothing. I
You
don't
never saw her on your way out.
I wouldn't recognize her if I knew her. It's funny because I wish I knew her. And
at that point in time, were you too excited and too hyped up to remember to think like, oh, where's that lady?
I mean, at that moment, who knows where my life is gonna go? I leave the garden saying I gotta do this. That just because you want to do something doesn't mean it's gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like you can, what do they say? You gotta what's that word they say? You gotta
manifest it.
Manifest it. You gotta manifest. I guess I manifested it that night in some ways, but there's so many things in life that hadn't gone right for me that I wasn't. But in my mind, I'm smitten. I'm on the train, on the subway, just going home, and I can't imagine what people looking at me must have thought. Like, this kid is in a cloud. I was just like, I was just reliving the whole night. Because you got to remember, the co-main event was also Junior Jones against Kennedy McKinney, and that was a great fight too, bro. That was a blockbuster doubleheader, bro. It was a block. Junior dropped Kennedy, was beating him up, and then all of a sudden Kennedy hits him with the right hand, and it's over. It's crazy,
Talk to me about your brain. Talk to me about your memory. I feel like you have
my long-term memory is good. Like I have a lot of things that stick on me. I got a terrible short-term memory.
Is that family? Is that
I don't know. I've lived. I guess everybody has their own unique experiences. I've lived my own experiences. My family are immigrants. I'm the first person in my family born in the U.S. And the only reason I'm born in the U.S. is because my father had gotten a contract to play in Mexico for a year. And the soccer season is from September to June. And my grandparents had moved to America 3 years before. I'm born in 1980. My grandparents moved in 1977. My mom gets married to my father, and they moved in the summer of 80, when she's pregnant with me. When my parents moved to America, my mom was pregnant with me, and I was going to be born in a few months. So that's the only reason I'm born in Brooklyn. After that season, in June, my father didn't want to stay in Mexico. And I recently had asked my mom, I was like, what happened in Mexico? She goes, they offered him another 2 years, but he wanted to go home. So they offered him to, bring his wife and bring his newborn son, but my father was kind of get homesick and stuff, I don't think from what I gather, my father could have been more dedicated to what he was doing, It was like a hustle for him, But nonetheless, she told me that, they almost moved to Mexico where Can you imagine? I would have ended up maybe I would have started boxing there. Who knows? You know.
Yeah.
But they wound up going back to Italy. So the first, I'm less than a year old. My little brother, who's born 2 years after me, is born in Italy as well. Because we stayed in Italy. We would come back every summer. So I have those memories. Yeah. Every summer we would come.
You a real Italian.
Yeah.
You are a real Italian. I always thought you were just an Italian from New York.
Well, there's Italian from New York too. I know a lot of Italians from New York, you know. But
I always thought you were an Italian from New York, but you were actually in Italy.
Yeah. I was more in Italy than here. We would only come in the summers because the summers my father had off, and we would come in the summers, and also at a certain point I had started kindergarten in Italy as well. So I went to kindergarten in Italy, and then my father retired at the end of the 1986 season, and they discussed with my mom like they're gonna move to America. My mom's parents are already there, and start things over there, And they came here, but within a few weeks, my father went back. It was a bad separation, And so now I'm in New York, And I started first grade in New York, and I started first grade. I think we moved like a month into the school year, So I was like the new kid, But New York had a lot of Italian kids and stuff, and whatever. I learned English that year, like in a year or two, whatever.
When did you start looking at the history of Italy, of Italians in boxing?
I remember liking Arturo Gatti because he was sort of like my experience, except his family moved to Montreal instead of New York. My family, had the immigrant experience and moved to New York. Arturo, I still don't know. There's people that tell me Arturo was born in Italy, and there's people that tell me Arturo moved here when he was 2 years old, and his family moved here. Either way, it's close enough to where he's basically Canadian with Italian roots. I'm New York with Italian roots. He spoke Italian, he spoke French. So and I'm one of the Italian Americans that also could speak Italian. So I looked at Arturo was like somebody I was like, wow, this guy's kind of like me. But except his family went to Montreal instead of New York. So I started looking at that, and then obviously everybody's heard of Rocky Marciano even before you, but casuals have heard of Rocky Marciano. But then, you start realizing guys that changed their names. Like I didn't know Willie Pepper was Italian until I started boxing myself and started looking into the old school fighters, and started looking at all that. And then you realize like more fighters were Italian than you realized. It's just their names changed or their names shortened and whatnot. And so, you watch Raging Bull too. That's always cool. So I feel like Raging Bull.
I watched that for the first time a couple weeks ago.
See, for me it resonates. Some people tell me they don't like it. For me it resonates because I'm from New York and I'm Italian American. So and I feel like that's an Italian American and he was a New Yorker, right? Yeah. But I also feel like Jake LaMotta had. I mean, he found a way to ruin it. He messed up his life. He was a crazy guy, but nonetheless, Jake LaMotta I felt like was an Italian American at the best time when it was the best time to be an Italian American, like 40s and 50s. And he was also a boxer when it was the best time to be a boxer. And he was a world champion. So like I feel like, damn, this guy had it hit it just right. I mean, best time to be an Italian American. Best time to be a boxer, because at that time it's literally just baseball and boxing, right? Best time to be a boxer. And as a boxer, he became a world champion. And he got to fight the guy who's considered the best ever, Ray Robinson. So he's known for those fights. He lost most of them, he still was in there. And then on top of that, he was a lunatic himself, so it made for an interesting movie. But I look at that movie and I'm like, it resonates with me because there's so much.
You get it.
Yeah,
You get it. I was like, damn, man, you had a hard life. You made it even harder,
Yeah, exactly. Jake got his way out of it, and he had to just make it back hard again.
So when you turn pro, and I mean, at this point, obviously you've had competitions, and your family has seen you now. When did your family kind of like buy into you being?
I remember I went to the 1999 National PAL tournament, and it was my first time leaving New York for tournaments. I started boxing in '97. I had my first amateur fight in March '98, and in the fall of '99, I went to the National PAL tournament. Nice. And I went there and I drew a Rock Allen my first fight. First fight, Rock Allen.
Rock had 200 fights at that point.
So literally the first day of the tournament. So, and I remember I had a
132.
132 was my first 132 tournament. I was fighting 125, but that was the first time I fought at 132. because I knew I had to make weight every day, and I was already struggling to make 125.
Yeah,
So I was like, if I got to make every day, I got to go to 32. Meantime, I drove Rock the first fight.
Yeah.
But I remember I had a person in my neighborhood who was somebody who was, really looked out for me. And he sponsored me to go to this tournament. This PAL Nationals was a tournament you could pay for, get sponsored for. And so now I go to this tournament and I draw Rock the first fight, and I'm like, man, what? This guy spent money. Like, what now? Like, I'm already thinking, like, I'm thinking I'm gonna fight my ass off because I trained hard. But at the same time, I know being reasonable, probably not gonna beat Rock, or even if I beat him, if it's gonna be close, and he may not give it to me.
Did you heard through the grapevine who he was?
I used to already watch the USA Boxing magazine.
You had seen the magazine already,
so I knew what the rankings were.
Yeah.
Again, I'm smitten, so I'm following all that. I knew who all those guys were. I remember Tian Shepard winning the Goodwill Games in '98 in New York. So I remember seeing those names.
Yeah.
So now I draw the first fight. Like, I go to the Nationals, I know it's a draw. I want to avoid these guys at least the first part of the tournament.
Sure.
I get the number 2 or 3 guy. I'm like, oh man.
Wow.
So I'm like thinking to myself, what's everybody gonna think back home? Like, they're not gonna know the difference. They just know, you lose the first day, So, but I'm like, whatever, man. It's like, I trained hard for the fight. I got in there. I thought I beat him, man. I lost a 3-2 split. Wow. They gave him a 3-2 split. I thought I beat him. Wow. Like, I fought my ass off, and he got a 3-2 split. It was also an Olympic trials qualifier. Yeah. And he hadn't yet qualified for the 2. He hadn't qualified for the trials yet, so they had to get him in.
Let me validate that real quick. I'd never been to tournaments and saw Rock get gifted, but I heard.
But I'll tell you another thing that came out. I'll tell you another thing that came out later, a year later.
Yeah.
The twins would weigh in for each other.
Yeah,
so that means Rock was not weighing in.
Yeah.
Because Rock was the heavier one. That means Tiger was weighing in 125, going to eat, and then coming back and weighing 132, heavy, weighing a little under. Yeah. And I remember for that weigh-in, I remember he came late. Like, he came like trotting down. I remember there was a big staircase. It was ABC's White World of Sports, the Disney White World of Sports. And he came trotting down. I was waiting already. You know what I mean? Like, and I remember he runs down the stairs. Yeah. Again, remember you talk about my memory. Because I was thinking, like, man, where is this guy? You know what I mean? Like, he's late. But the time he came within the allotted time frame. He wasn't late to where he should have been DQ'd. And now looking back, probably Tiger had weighed in for his fight. He probably went to eat, took their time, and that's why he was coming a little later because he weighed in as Tiger. Yeah. And I don't know the difference. I don't know. I know where they are on paper. I don't know. The only thing I know about the Allen brothers was that Shamir Reyes, who was a New York kid who I used to spar, was very good. He was a JO national champion, had beaten Tiger in the finals of the JO nationals. Okay. And Shamir used to beat me up in the gym when I first started. He was a southpaw. He was a good fighter. He ended up signing with Don King, and Don just wrecked him. Never heard of him. Yeah, because he was a JO national champion, and he'd beaten Tiger. So I knew the Allen brothers from the book. I knew Tiger had been beaten by Shamir at the JO nationals when they were JOs. Yeah. I was caught up on my homework.
You hadn't been there, but you've been there, like in your mind.
Yeah, my homework was caught up.
And real quick, let me say, just for the Allen Richardson family, you already know I love y'all. But
I love them too.
I just don't want anybody to feel like, yo, we just threw shade
on them.
No.
This isn't shade.
This is real. This
is not shade. This is, I would say this is part of the learning experience. Because I feel like I'm grateful for all these experiences. Like, I would have, I'll be honest, that tournament, I would have rather gotten a couple of half-ass guys so I could beat them up, and people would see me. Yeah. But here's where you mentioned, or where you realize you could do this. After that fight, I go to the back, I'm crying. I'm crying. I'm like, I lost this on points. Now I gotta go home. Yeah. Again, I had a good person who spent money on me. I gotta go home after one day, and they're not gonna understand that I drew the top guy. They're not even boxing guys. They're just good people that helping me out. Yeah. And now I'm like crying, and I remember 2 people. And I think one of them, Junior Jones, sent because it was Junior's manager. I used to spar Junior. Yeah. So Junior probably had Gary Gittleson eyeing guys. Gary comes up to me and goes, I don't know what those judges are watching. You won that fight, and he gives me his number. At the time, there's not a cell phone. He gives me his number. And then Lou Duva comes into the room and tells me, I don't know what those guys are watching. You won that fight, this and that. So I'm crying, and all of a sudden I feel kind of better because I'm like, because I know who these people are, especially Lou. Lou was on TV all the time, so I was like, man, these people, like, important people are noticing me, and whatever. It was, I think Rock, that was an Olympic trials qualifier, and then Rock ended up getting to the trials for 2000, but he ended up making the team in 04. I think he lost to Marshall Martinez in the 2000 Marshall.
2000.
Yeah, Marshall ended up making the team and then got arrested and all that. He got into trouble.
Wow.
And I think they sent David Jackson instead of Marshall because Marshall got kicked off the
Okay.
team. But yeah, so that was that. That was that one. And then I remember another part of the amateur. It's funny to point out the amateurs. For the 2000 Olympics, I had one more chance to 2000 Olympics. I had one more chance to qualify for the trials, the Eastern Trials, right? So I go to the Eastern Trials in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Win the first fight. Quarterfinals, Aaron Torres. Aaron Torres was another big amateur. You remember Aaron Torres? He was a national Golden Glove champion, and he was he still hadn't qualified for the trials yet, man. I mean, it was the last opportunity to qualify. He still hadn't qualified for the trials.
Yeah.
Now it's funny the politics of boxing, right? I kept losing to this kid in all the New York finals, and that's why I couldn't get to nationals that often at that time. It was Darling Jimenez. He was a Dominican kid from New York.
I don't know him.
He was always going to nationals, and every time I fought him, it was a little closer and a little closer and a little closer. He ended as a pro. He fought Gamboa. That was like his claim to fame. We dropped Gamboa in round 1, but Gamboa beat him on points. You know, on HBO Boxing After Dark. That was as far as he got as a pro. But Darling, I remember, he used to beat me in the finals of the tournament. So every tournament I'd get a little closer, but I couldn't get a decision on him, right? So I couldn't go to the nationals. So we boxed off to go to the Eastern Trials in New York, and I ended up beating him. So what does New York do? They sent us both.
Oh,
So I was like, what's the point? What'd you make us box for, you know?
Unreal.
Right? So they sent us both. I tell you, the story gets better. I lose to Aaron Torres in the quarters, so now that's it. There goes making the Olympics. Even though really, when you're gonna make the Olympics, you start boxing in '87, you're gonna make the 2000 Olympics. It's very difficult, right? But I'm crying, I'm sad, whatever. Yo, Jimenez beats Aaron Torres in the finals. Jimenez qualifies for the trials. The guy that I beat in New York, they shouldn't have even been there. Ends up beating Torres, eliminates me in the quarters, and then Darling beats him in the finals and gets in trials, and Torres didn't get to the trials.
That's how it goes.
Crazy. So yeah, so the amateurs are a fun, crazy rowdy experience because you see so many people, you meet so many people, and then you're catching, you're moving on up. Like the Jeffersons literally moving on up.
You the 04 quad or 2000 quad?
2000.
You more so the 2000
Yeah,
quad.
because I turned pro in
You turned
01.
pro in 01.
My goal, again, my mind, I form my own reality.
Listen, I ain't mad at you.
My goal was, I started boxing in '97. Once I realized, okay, I got to do this. I'm going to make 2000 Olympics, and I'm going to turn pro after the 2000 Olympics. I mean, looking back, it was kind of crazy to even that I thought I could do that. I'm
Just in 3 years.
I'm going to make 2000 Olympics, and then I would turn pro, like with all these big Olympians. At the time, before 2000, there was 96 and 92. Look how many stars came out of that, So I'm thinking, it's not like the Olympics now where, people look at it with like a side eye.
Yeah.
At that time, a U.S. Olympian was a U.S. Olympian.
If you did it, you was there.
So I'm like, yo, I'm gonna make the Olympics, and I'm gonna turn pro. Well, I don't make the Olympics in 2000, and I said to myself, and I was getting pretty good, but I said to myself, I don't feel quite ready. There's still moments in sparring where I still feel inadequate. Like moments happen in sparring where I don't feel like I have all the answers. Like I have to always have at least an answer, even if I'm not perfect. I have to always understand the psychology of having an answer if I'm in a bad situation. And there's still certain small moments and certain sparring sessions where I don't quite know the answer, So I've got to, I feel like if I'm going to turn pro, I've got to know all the answers for all the circumstances, regardless. That's so I know how to maneuver myself in the ring. I gave myself another year instead of turning pro after not qualifying for the 2000 Olympics. And in that year, I made the USA team. I won the US championships, and that was really a year that I needed as well. I'm glad I spent that extra year. And again, speaking of meeting different people, I mean, you got to see how you fought Usyk in the amateurs, right? So you got to see a lot of. I remember being on a USA England duel in London, and David Haye was on the other team.
Oh, wow.
And David Haye, and looking back, I'm sure you saw that times 100, right? You saw all those people.
I seen them all,
But for me, looking back on that, I remember Haye knocking out our guy. And then later on, David Haye becomes David Haye,
And I had a similar situation to you. I didn't make the 08 team. Daniel Jacobs goes on and turns pro. They asked me to fill in as the alternate. You might have a chance to make it, and I said, I want to do it. They never gave me the chance, but he gave me another full year. And maybe
really
that's
what you need at that time.
I have no doubt. Everything, you seem like you're a man of timing. I've always been like that, where timing has always just been right for me. I have no doubt if I don't turn pro, if I turn pro before going through that 07 and 08 process, my career don't end the same. Don't go the way that it goes.
And it's funny, life is about timing in general. Right? But I feel also winning the U.S. championships in that year, That was in that extra year I stayed. For me, I mean, that was like,
and that was the
deal.
year I was supposed to win it too, because everybody else moved on. I was like, yo, this is my year.
Oh, no, wait.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so I'm sure that's had to have been how you felt.
That's what happened too. Same thing. The 2000 class left.
Yeah,
You know? So I remember there was the under 19 champion. There was a couple of guys, stragglers around, some top 10 guys.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can beat these guys. And I remember Escobedo, who went to the 04 Olympics, he beat me at the PAL, a 2000 PAL. Not the 2000 PAL, I got to the semis. And he won the 2000 PAL, but he beat me in the semis. So I wanted to see him bad in the U.S. Championships. I'm like, I'm going to get him back, man.
Yeah.
I felt really confident. And he got beat by the under 19 champion. Raquan Kimbrough was at the time. So
wow.
Yeah. So
Pennsylvania.
So Raquan beats him. So I don't get to rematch Vicente.
Yeah.
And then Raquan ends up getting beat in the semis by a kid from Florida who I don't think ever turned pro, and I beat that kid in the finals.
Wow.
But
we were really close to Raquan coming up. So
Raquan was a good kid.
He was one of the guys.
He had a Ray Robinson look to him. I remember they were promoting him that way, you know? Alakippa, Pennsylvania.
I did push-ups because he looked the way he looked, all that kind of stuff. Listen, let's fast forward, man. You turn pro, and you become Magic Man, and things start really just kind of working for you. You seem to be a goal-oriented guy. Like practically, it seems like once boxing came into your life, goal-oriented. When did you start hitting those goals and achieving?
I had a lot of check marks when I
Yeah.
started boxing. When I decided I'm going to do this, from my first amateur fight to winning a Golden Glove title to winning a national tournament to going to not all of them hit.
Did you have everything written down?
No, I had a check mark on mine. But
I ain't mad
Olympics,
at that.
Olympics.
My dad used to tell me to write it down. I was like, it's in my
I
head.
should have probably wrote it down because it would be cool to look back at.
For sure.
Not all of them hit, but you know what I tell people? If you set the standard to reach for the sky, you're never going to touch the sky, but you'll never stop trying because you'll never get there. So you'll count. Now, there's a flip side to that. There's always going to be some disappointment to you as well. Sure. But if you really stop to look at it when you get older, just because you didn't reach that, in trying to reach that, look how much you accomplished. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So you always set the bar very high, and you put off little check marks. That's what I did. And I remember the guy, I did that because my uncle had told me that was one of the reasons he felt like he was looking at Alex Stewart hitting the bag. He's like, I can never do that. Well, sure, brother. First year you're boxing, you can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you know? But so set the little goals, and I set the little goals. Some of them I hit, some of them I didn't, you know? And it was like first amateur fight, first Golden Glove title, first national title, make the Olympics, my first pro fight, all this stuff. And every time I would get to one, like I would be in the dressing room and I would like, it's one of my checkmark moments, you know? Like I can remember like my pro debut, like, you know, coming off the U.S. Championships win, because now I had more value to me as well, you know? And so I was, you know, thinking like, okay, this is one of those check marks. You know, and my first world championship, all this stuff. That's, you know, winning a world championship, all that stuff, you know? Obviously, you don't hit all of them, but it's good enough, man. Looking later on, you know, like I said, you set the bar to reach for the stars. Nobody could actually touch the stars. But if everybody reaches for the stars, they'll get the maximum out of themselves.
It's hard to be 100%, but if you're striving to be 100%, you're that much further than the guy that don't even.
Yeah, because that's the man in the arena speech with Theodore Roosevelt, right? You know, the who has basically the man in the arena speech with Theodore Roosevelt. If you've ever looked at it, is basically he has the right. That's the man. It's not the man who's the critic that has the right to talk and has the right. It's the man in the arena who risks. Who puts himself out there, who's willing to go get and risk the humiliation for that goal, rather than the guy who's the critic outside and isn't willing to try that. And I'll tell you what, there's positives, there's failures in trying it, all of it, but the experience itself makes you grow up. You know, and I'm sure you know that too.
Absolutely.
Obviously, you've had this whole career. You've been through this ride, champ. You know, so it's like you grow up. And you mature as an individual, as a human being, and as a man, you know. And if it works right, I mean, I don't see it all. It doesn't always work that way, but it humbles you too.
Absolutely,
it humbles you too. I don't always see everybody.
No, man, no, you absolutely
but it humbles
right.
you too.
And it keeps you humble, and it keeps you just kind of
because you realize your mortality. Boxing race, you realize your mortality. You can get an ego from it, but man, you can get hurt. It can be taken away from you. As a matter of fact, personally, my method of success was also understanding who I was, but more importantly, understanding who I wasn't. You know what I mean? Basically, fight the fight that is more advantageous to me, and try to make my opponent fight that kind of fight. Know who I'm not,
Yeah.
Don't be a banger. Don't be I knew I wasn't a banger. I knew I wasn't a big puncher.
Yeah.
So don't get into that kind of firefight
Yeah.
because that's advantageous to my opponent.
Yeah.
You know, so some guys I can remember Jason Litzow. I remember Jason was so talented.
Yeah.
I just felt like he didn't know who he wasn't.
Yeah.
I just felt like he had no chin, but he was always banging it out. You know what I mean? Like that kid was so talented, but nobody will ever remember him. And why? Because he just didn't approach it right. You know, you gotta know who you are, but I think it's more important personally to know who you aren't.
Absolutely.
When you're in
wow.
there.
That's a
and
gem
so I
right
took
there.
that with me as well. And of course, all that's part of the maturing process, part of the growing up process, it's part of everything. You know.
So at what point did you hit, like, where was one of your first big goals that you hit as a professional?
My professional goals were pro debut, world championship, and Hall of Fame. That's it. You know, so I'm probably not going to get in the Hall of Fame. It's okay. You know what I mean? Like at this point, I can let it go. But 1-2 world championships. You know, the arena, for example. Like I told myself when I left the Garden that night, Hamed Kelly, I gotta feel this. I gotta do this. Well, that was December 1997. In June 2006, I main evented in that building with Miguel Cotto in the big Garden. You know, I didn't win the fight. Kevin didn't win the fight either against Hamed, but people still remember it, right? So you know, I hit that, and I mean that was I told myself I gotta feel this. I gotta be in this building. I gotta feel what these guys are feeling, and I had that walkout in that building. I fought that fight. You know, in a main event in Madison Square Garden, in the big arena. So that was a checkmark moment. You know, again, it's part of the. It's part of the process.
Yeah,
you know?
man.
It's part of the process. And then as you get older, you know, you look back on it. You know, there's failures, there's successes, but you also start to, you know, consider more positive things. You know, I you know, start looking at the conditions of the world. I start thinking about God. I start thinking about you know, this life in general. You know, you get a little older and. It's not just boxing anymore, you know. It is boxing, obviously. It'll always be boxing, but it's also, you know, part of growing up. But I'm able to have the time to do that and consider these things because, you know, I don't have to worry about so many other things because boxing provided, you know, for me at least, you know. And so I'm able to compartmentalize things the way I want to compartmentalize them, you know.
Which fight would you say we had the best Paulie that could have ever been?
There's 4 nights in my life, 4 nights in my whole life, where I was in the dressing room and it just felt perfect.
Just knew it.
It just felt perfect. I'm sure you had these. And somebody told me you only peak just right only a handful of times in your life. I don't know if that's true. It was true for me, though. It turned out to be 4 times in my life that I was in the locker room, dressing room, and I was like, wow, this is perfect. It was a New York Golden Glove quarterfinal matchup in 2000 against a kid named Kent Geames. He didn't end up going. It was a 132-pound open division quarterfinal. It was in the Queen's Elks Lodge, and I can remember just shadow boxing. Everything was just fluid. It was just fluid, like it was like water. I was like, wow, and it was fast. And I dominated. I stopped the kid. Everything was just flying. Then. The night I fought on Friday Night Fights against Kevin Watts on ESPN Friday Night Fights, the co-main event. I won that fight by knockout as well. I just felt untouchable. I felt like my eye, everything. You know, they say when a baseball player, the ball looks real big when he's in point. You know, with a boxer, I feel like it's all that there. Your reaction's there, your timing is there, your speed is there, everything else. Then the night I fought Sinchenko for my second world title, that was like, I don't know if it was the mentality I took in that fight. I couldn't get the fight in the United States. So we lost the purse bid. It was in Ukraine. And I felt like I was going to get robbed. And I felt like it wasn't going to be me. I was going to be the end of me because I had just tried to rebuild myself after losing to Khan. And I had a couple of smaller fights after losing to Khan to work my way back to a title shot. But this title shot was going to be away from America. If I lose it, I couldn't get a Showtime and HBO date, I remember, coming back. I remember Golden Boy signed me, had to put me on some pay-per-view undercards on TV to their credit. They put me on Maidana Morales undercard on TV and underneath Hopkins versus Dawson on TV.
Atlantic City?
Hopkins Dawson, the first one, LA.
Okay.
And then Maidana Morales was in MGM Grand. I was in the I opened both pay-per-views on TV. So it gave... it was important because they needed to wipe off the stain of the con loss. The con loss looked real bad. I was struggling to make weight. Con was too fast. He was too good, and I looked real bad losing.
Very outmatched.
So people just thought I was shot and done. So it was important for me to get on TV so people could see like, oh, Paulie still got it.
Yeah.
So I ended up in this title fight. Now I can't. HBO and Showtime. They don't want it. Yeah. They don't want it because they think, okay, we've used him. He's used up enough. Like we don't want to give him dates. So we can't bid on the bid high enough. They win the first bid.
I think my dad said Paulie went over there and won him a title.
Yeah, and that's what it was. Because I thought that. Here's why I think I fought so well too. I went into camp knowing I was going to get robbed, and I went into camp angry, and I told myself, these guys are just kicking me out, man. You know what? I'm going to show them how good I was. They might rob me, but they're going to remember, that kid was good. Yeah. Right? They're going to, you know what? If this is the last thing I do in this business, like if I might go over there and get robbed, but they're going to know. And that guy, he's going to know who he's in the ring with. And you know what? Because it wasn't the pressure of winning, it was like everything just kept flowing perfectly in camp, bro. It was like I was waiting for that camp something to go wrong, and it was like it just kept getting better and better and better and sharper and sharper and sharper. So on fight night, again, I'm not thinking about, usually on my fight, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to think, am I winning these rounds? The only night of my life, I didn't think about nothing, bro. I was like, yeah, I thought about just box. Just box. Only, because even if I wanted to think like that, I'm an emotional person personally. So, so even if I wanted to eliminate all those thoughts in my mind during my other big fights, I couldn't do it. I was always thinking all these things. But that night, because I felt like I wasn't going to get robbed anyway, I wasn't thinking about anything. Oh, did I win that round? Did I not win that round? Did I do enough that round? Yeah. Not even thinking about it. Just go in there and box. It was like the freshest feeling, bro. But it's funny because I walked in the ring, and then he's coming out because he's the champion. And I remember looking at my best friend, and he was in the ring with me. He's in my corner. And I'm like, bro, because we turned pro in Coney Island, an outdoor stadium on an HBO card. So I'm like, you imagine? I told him, I'm like, you imagine we turned pro outdoors in Brooklyn, and it's got to end here in Ukraine outdoors. It was a soccer stadium. I'm like, it's got to end out here. He's like, and my boy got tears in his eyes. He goes, I don't want it to end, bro. It just came out. I was like, it just came out because I had felt it all camp. I'm like, it ain't gonna end tonight. It ain't gonna end tonight. And it just was a perfect feeling, man. I fought. I mean, if you watch that fight, I fought really, really sharply. But again, that's the third out of 4 nights that I felt so perfect. And when it's like that, I don't even have to warm up in the dressing room as much anymore. Everything's so fluid. Yeah. I remember in that dressing room.
I've been like that too.
I'll tell you how on point your mind is. I remember the undercard is on TV. I told him shut the TV off. I don't want to watch anybody else box.
Yes, sir.
My boxing is in my mind, is registered so perfect right now. I don't even want to look at somebody else boxing. It's so weird because it's such a rare feeling. The other time that what came out like that was the Judah fight.
Wow.
The night I beat Judah. It was like I was sparring southpaws all camp, got sharper and sharper. And again, the dressing room, I barely warmed up. But again, we had the locker room in there. You were fighting Devin. I was like, bro, get this TV away from me. I don't want to watch. I don't want to see any of these guys. Because you start watching, incidentally because you're curious.
It was only me.
You're curious. No, man. I was like, yo, get this thing out of. But if I don't feel that way, I do watch.
Yeah.
Only those 4 times in my life I felt like that, and 2 of them weren't. There wasn't even a TV in the locker room because it wasn't big fights. The other 2 were big fights. But only when I feel like that. If I don't feel that perfectly, I've had fights where I've won other nights. I've looked good, but haven't felt like that.
Yeah. Wow.
And I watched the fights on the undercard in the locker room. Yeah. Because I don't feel that. That's not what I'm feeling. And I still fought well enough to win, even in bigger fights, even in HBO fights and whatnot. But those particular nights, it was just, I felt like I could beat anybody in the world. In my mind, I was like, on those particular nights. But you had them too. It's like
it's crazy to hear that you I know exactly what you're feeling.
But only a real focused athlete can get it. You know what I mean? Like people, a focused athlete watching right now will understand. Like those moments are so rare.
With the TV on, I would always get invested. Oh, he's doing this. Oh, he's doing
that.
And then after a while, I would just say, turn it off. I think every fight at some point the TV had to go off, the music had to be on. in the midst.
Yeah, because
that-
you
all
got to be
that
you.
kind of stuff.
You
Yeah,
got to be
gotta
you.
be you.
Because I didn't want to see. And when I was that sharp, I didn't want to see it because I didn't want that to become in me. Like I don't want to make that move. I know moves I want to make.
That
You
is
know what I
so
mean?
good. Yeah.
But yeah, so that was that came out, and then you know, like I said, it ends.
Yeah.
It ends. You know, I tell you, the last fight when I got stopped with a body shot with Sam Eggington, and I tell you what,
Yeah,
at a certain
Australian?
point in England.
No, he's English.
He's England, yeah.
Okay.
It was on the co-main event. It was nice to be at a big card. I was real happy. At least I got back on a big card before I retired. I was a co-main event on Bellew vs. David Hay. So the O2 Arena was a big. And honestly, the fans out there by that point loved me because I fought their guys. I fought in England a bunch of times.
Yeah.
They would cheat with Paulie chants. It was cool, you know?
Yeah.
So it was like, you know, I'll always remember that night, even though it didn't go my way. And it was just like the last handful of fights. I think after I fought you, I think that was it. You know what I mean? It was like it wasn't coming back the same way anymore. And that just happens sometimes.
I was going to ask you about the fight with AB, and then I was going to ask you about the fight with you and I. Kind of talk to me about the fight with AB.
The fight with AB was, I'll tell you what, the fight with AB was the last real fun promotion I had. You know what I mean? Like it was like, I remember.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I didn't
No,
do my job.
No, it's okay. Because it's not like I don't have any dislike for AB. Like I'm cool with AB, man. Like people overreact with that. I'm telling you, I overreacted in there. But
I tell people come in here, they're like, "Oh, y'all cool?" Like, yeah.
And not just that, even with the chick. Like if that was a girlfriend of mine, I think maybe I would have had a hard time getting over it.
Yeah.
I didn't like that people thought that was my girlfriend, and people thought he stole my girlfriend. I was like, bro, like, cause it's a bad look if you think he stole my girlfriend. You know what I mean? So I was like, yo, and I remember, again, maybe I misplayed it, but then again, when I look back, I'm kind of glad I played it that way because it blew up the promotion. I mean, the promotion was crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I can remember in the moment, being mad, being focused, being, you know, it's a world title fight. You know, that's the title I won in Ukraine with Zinchenko. And I can remember just being focused and everything. But also I can remember like a week after the fight, I wake up in my bed a week after the fight, and I've lost, you know, it was whatever. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm bored, bro. Like that was a fun promotion. Waking up motivated every day. And also AB's a good trash talker, and I'm a good trash talker. And he kept me on my P's and Q's. Like I had to be sharp with him. I had to really be witty. Cause you know, like for example, people say like Floyd's a good trash talker, but Floyd in the McGregor training and McGregor run up showed he wasn't that great of a trash talker. Because being a good trash talker means you come up with stuff on the fly based on being put on the spot by your opponent. You know, you can't rehearse that because you don't know what he's gonna say. And AB was that kind of trash talker, but I was that kind of trash talker too. But it was motivating to have to be better than him or him better than me. You know what I mean? So every day was like a motivation. The gym, the trash talk, everything, the press conferences.
I guarantee you, people would want to see a rematch because they would want to see.
Well, that was the shame, and that's such a shame, Shawn. Champ, that was such a shame.
I agree. I agree.
How do you make? Because not only would you have had a rematch, you had the WBA, the main welterweight title, bro. They changed the rules on me. I was a super champion by today's standards. But at that time, because the WBA super champion now is just the main champion. I was the main champion, but the WBA changed the rules to you had to have at that time you had to have 5 defenses. So there was not a super champion in every weight class at that time. At that time, this is before you started winning titles.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
There was at that time the super champion only showed himself if you made 5 defenses or if you unified.
Okay, got
Then you were a super champion. Otherwise, the weight class had no super champion. So a super champion was the WBA welterweight champion if you became special, but it was the WBA welterweight champion. At a certain point, they decided to make a super champion for everything and no more requisites. Super champion, and they also had a regular champion. So I got screwed because at the time, what the rules were, I was a regular champion who was the main champion, but didn't do the 5 defenses of the unification. As a matter of fact, I'll show you how it was. I lost it to Brenagh. Brenagh lost it to Maidana. Maidana lost it to Floyd, who then became super champion because he unified it with his WBC title. Once it was unified, that title became a super title. Had to have a requisite at that time, and Keith Thurman became the regular champion, if you remember. You know, because he beat Diego Chavez. Now it screws me because looking back, people look back at that belt and they think I had the secondary belt. I had the main title. So that was why you also had to have the rematch with Brenagh because me and AB would have had a trilogy, bro. You would have had a trilogy. You would have been a trilogy. And AB lit it up after the rematch.
Money would have been crazy.
But also AB lit it up after the first fight because with that ending, now people want to see it again. I mean, I thought it was over. I'm like, yo, whatever. And then he says that, and I flipped out. And then now got people waiting for the rematch, man.
Yeah.
And it's for a major welterweight championship of the world. That's it. You would have had a trilogy with the major welterweight championship of the world going back and forth.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I think they dropped the ball, man.
Was there another fight that you wanted to have that you didn't get outside of Floyd?
Outside of Floyd, nah. I mean,
No.
honestly, I wasn't the kind of guy. I always chased the accolades. I wasn't chasing people. Whoever had the titles. I remember even as a prospect. I noticed like certain prospects talk about champions. Even as a prospect, I remember looking at the champions, and I remember thinking those guys ain't gonna be champion when I get up there. So I'm not thinking about them. You know what I mean? Like I remember when I turned pro, the champion. It's funny, one of them I did fight. I fought Judah, but at the time when I turned pro, the champions were Sean Bay at 140. I turned pro 135, but the 140-pound champions were Judah, Sean Bay, and Kasha Zhu.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about fighting them.
Yeah.
Because in my mind at that time, I'm like, by the time I get there, they won't have the titles anymore. So I was never aiming for somebody.
Yeah.
You know, like I was always aiming for accolades. You know, and so that was my goal. And you know, but I going back to the stoppage loss that I had at the end with the body shot. I get hurt, you know, and at the end I was fighting more to not lose. After I lost to you, I was fighting more to not lose than to win. I don't know if that makes sense to everybody. When you fight to not lose and when you fight to win, you're intense.
Yeah.
When you fight not to lose, you're just trying to work. You know, in England they call it you old man it. You try to use your savvy and I won a couple of fights fighting not to lose. You know, I was trying to get back on the European circuit. You know, and
off subject, but Frank Martin bet not fight not to lose.
Well, he's too young to fight not to lose.
I don't think
you got to be hungry.
But
But I feel like Hopkins at the end of his career knew how to fight not to lose, and he knew how to win that way. You know what I'm saying? Like you old man it. You used your savvy. You know, you get away with more and. You can actually do okay with that, but if the pace is brought too much, like even when Hopkins and Kovalev brought the pace too fast, or you know, then it's too much for you. You can't do that. Eggington was a guy who brought a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, he hits me with the body shot. He was a good body puncher. He hit me with a body shot. I go down. I could have probably got up 8 or 9, Shawn. I'll tell you, man. I could have probably got up 8 or 9. Yeah. When I didn't get up 8 or 9, and all of these thoughts are flying through my mind. If I get up right now, it's not about getting up.
Yeah.
The fight's in the balance. It was a very close fight. As a matter of fact, when I got stopped, I was up on 2 cards and down on 1. So the fight's in the balance. Now with that knockdown, I might be down on all 3. If I want to win this fight, it's going to be set off. The second half of the fight is coming up. It was round 7. Do I want to face that? It's not just getting up. It's getting up and trying to win now. Everything. I got to try to win. Bro, the thoughts flew through my mind at 8, 9, and they go through my mind 10. I got up and I was like, I'm done. I'm retired. If I don't get up, the old me would have got up. If I don't do that anymore, that's it. Like, if I'm not willing to go through that fire anymore, that's it.
For a long time, that was kind of your thing. It was speed and it was like this heart and this determination.
Yeah. And I have people that made my reputation with the Cotto fight doing that. And I was like, if I'm not willing to do that anymore, I'm done.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I retired 2 days later.
Let's go to our fight. I remember feeling very disrespected in the lead up. We would do those phone conferences. Remember stupid ass phone conferences?
I would always try to get something from some people.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell you AB is the last fun promotion I had.
Yeah.
Because it gave me something to grasp at. I needed that motivation. I was kind of like, you know, Jordan mentality where Jordan would find something to be offended about just so he could score 40 on you and get motivated. I would always reach for that, but with you, it didn't get it.
No.
I didn't get any of it. You know?
So my dad
but I was reaching for it.
My dad and I, we got it on the speakerphone and we're listening to you. I can't really chime in or we're just listening to you. And I'm like, what is he talking about? You hear that? And my dad's like, we gonna get him. We gonna get him. You know what I mean?
But I was trying
you were reaching, but did you, like, for the sake of words, like, did you, like, believe?
When it's a promotion, in my mind, I put things in my head.
Yeah.
You know, and even if I've got to lie to myself, I'm
put them in
brainwash
my
myself.
head, and then I put them in your head.
Yeah, and even if I've got to brainwash myself that way. Because you know, as fighters, we lie to ourselves. We gotta be confident every time, and we gotta get ourselves to that point.
Absolutely.
We gotta get ourselves to that place.
Yeah.
By the time I fought you, I'm 33, so I'm not as angry anymore. I've made decent money. I've had a career. Definitely not the teenager that I was when I was angry, you know?
Yeah.
But I can still fight a little bit, and I came off a good win over Judah just right before that. And I was looking, you had a world title fight.
Yep.
You had an IBF world title.
Yep.
I was looking for something to grasp at, basically like Brenagh had given me. You know what I mean? I was looking for something to grasp at.
Yeah.
Where then in the gym, I'm like, You know what I mean? And it was like, because at that point, just the world championship,
Wasn't enough.
It's not that it should be enough.
Yeah,
It
sure.
should be enough. You know what I mean? It should be enough.
But you're where you're at.
Even the possibility of getting Floyd if I get the IBF title. You know what I mean? Because at that point, you're a newcomer. I've got enough of a reputation where I may get Floyd if I take your IBF title.
Yep.
Even that should have been motivating. But it was just, I always motivated off emotion and anger. This is what I was. Different people are different. Some people will stay away from emotion.
Yeah.
I always motivated off anger and emotion.
Yeah.
That was the way I could motivate myself.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't there,
Yeah.
it was like, and that doesn't mean it always worked out. Like me and Amir Khan had a crazy press conferences and everything, and brawl at the weigh-in, and then it didn't work out for me. You know what I mean? But yeah, with you, I didn't grasp any of it. You didn't grasp it. You didn't grab at it. You didn't grab at it.
And that's just
and I wasn't angry enough in the locker room going out before. Like I was too like, it wasn't like, and I knew in my mind, I'm like, this is a hungry, like raging kid, because I know that age. You know what I mean? Like everything's in front of you and you're right there. You just won your world title.
Yeah.
So, and I knew in the back of my mind, I'm like, bro, I'm get up.
Yeah.
It's like, I know, I trained, I was ready, but you're just not. I don't know, man. And then
Shout
when
out to DDA, the producer, he said when I told him you were coming into town, you got to ask him about the weigh-in. What he,
the elephant trunks. Yeah, that was just me again. Attention, just me giving you something to remember me by.
You remember exactly? You remember I came late to the weigh-in. Do you remember me?
Vaguely.
Late to the weigh-in or whatever. We, getting the rest of it all. Get the rest of it all. And I came in as that whole thing had happened or whatever, and they were like getting me to the stage or really quickly, whatever. And I was like, "What the hell is that?" And I was like, to the point what you just said, I said, "Oh, he just trying to give people something to remember."
Yeah. It's like that's right. Because again, remember the Joan Guzman, the yellow hair. That stuck with me my whole career. It stuck with me my whole career.
In the back room of our fight, things really just kind of weren't the same for you. Did you acknowledge it, or did you try to brainwash yourself to
No, I tried to brainwash myself. I was trying to, I guess because I trained for the fight, Sean. It's not like I was ill prepared. It's a world title fight. I trained for the fight every day. But like I said, I can remember telling myself, get it in that anger mode because you're gonna have a raging kid. I knew you were an energy fighter. You know what I mean? Especially when you were young, you were a very energy fighter. And I'm like, you wanna. If I could go back the way I was feeling that night, because it wasn't one of those super sharp nights, right? But it was sharp enough because you had Cam. You're sharp enough.
Yeah.
If I could go back and do it all over again, I would have probably came out just flying. I would have got myself knocked out in 4 rounds, but I would have probably got less hurt. I would have probably got less hurt because I would have just got punched out. Like I would have just came across the ring and just used my speed, and I would at least the people would have remembered it better. If I could go back, because I wasn't gonna beat you.
Yeah.
So, but obviously hindsight is 20/20. If I could go back, I would come out and because I always had a lot of speed. I was still fast, and I would just put some speed on you. You would have probably got through it anyway, and then I wasn't hurting you. You had a great chin, and but at least you would have went at it toe to toe. I probably wouldn't have been able to keep that pace. And then I would have.
I never
went
looked
out.
at this until just right now. But do you think a younger version of you would have?
A younger version of me is not a welterweight. A younger version of me is not a welterweight. I never had any physical advantage at welterweight except speed. So it was not as a matter of fact, at 140, even the clinches, I was stronger than almost every opponent at 140 in the clinches. The only guy that I felt like was stronger than me in the clinches was Herman Ngujo. He was just like bulk African. If he lived in Canada, he was Cameroonian. But in the clinches, I was like, this guy's like a piece of steel, man. But he wasn't a big puncher. He was just really strong. But in the clinches, even not without a lot of punching power, in the clinches, I was stronger than a lot of my opponents at 140. 47. It wasn't there. It wasn't that. You know what I mean? So I had to make up for some stuff.
I don't want to relive the fight pretty much at all, except for one thing. And I'll tell my side of it, right? So we're just getting to 47, and we won the title. And along the way, what we were doing, we were always looking at my body. Does my body look normal, right? So, fight night in the locker room, my dad comes over to me, and he says, "Why are you smiling?" And I looked up and I said, "Look, I got my legs. My legs are my legs were thick, like they they look normal." And my dad said, "That's good." I said, "We're gonna get him tonight," And so coming out to the ring, like it was coming off of the Devin Alexander performance, it was Paulie saying I can't box. I'm just a rough Hauser kind of guy. And it was like that energy, along with the energy that I was born with. And then on top of that, before I come out, I'm looking at my legs and I'm like, oh, he's going to get it, you know?
But you see what you said? You said, oh, Paulie said I can't box. And so you came out to box. I was trying to.
I didn't come out I don't know.
Because it started a little, I remember at first it started a little slow. So I was, then I started overthinking.
And that's the point.
I started overthinking like, and he ain't doing what
The first punch that I throw, I cut you with. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It was a jab.
Yeah, and I remember you cut me there, and also Danny cut me a year later with a jab too.
Oh, wow.
And I remember shit like that used to never happen to me, bro.
Yeah.
I was like, bro, this is getting old, scar tissue.
We were literally on opposite sides.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it thinking like, oh, I got him.
Yeah.
And you're like, this isn't normal.
Yeah,
like,
because it happened to me with you and Danny.
Yeah.
And I remember what happened with Danny. We curse here, no? I don't want to. No,
whatever.
No, because I remember with Danny, he hit me with a jab, and he cut me here, and I'm like, ah, shit. I'm like, come on, man. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I felt like my skin was almost betraying me too. As you're getting older, you're getting older. Because bro, I could take the shot. I was getting cut when I was younger, but it was like it took more than just a jab.
Yeah.
Like now I'm getting cut with a jab. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And granted, again, these are welterweights.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's different weight.
Yeah.
It's then I've gotten accustomed to and everything else. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, going back to it, if I could change it, I would have lost anyway. But I would have just put punches and bunches on you and speed and just. And I would have probably gone out in 4 or 5 rounds anyway. But it would have just been better. And I probably would have got less hurt because I got hurt, man. I got hurt. It was.
Before we finish up here, I want to go to a fight that most people kind of like hold you in high regards for, and of course that's the fight against Miguel Cotto. When did you fracture your jaw in that fight?
I didn't fracture my jaw. That's what people think I fractured my orbit bone.
Oh.
The orbit bone.
How was the vision?
My vision was okay. My vision was okay. Didn't get. I can't say it was like something bad, but I tell you the feeling of it, which I think what benefited me is the naivety because I didn't know you could break these bones. Yeah. I mean, I knew Meldred Taylor had broken it, but I wasn't thinking about it. I'm thinking you break your nose or your jaw. That's it. And I remember I get knocked down around 2, and in hindsight, the doctors told me there's nerves that go from here to your teeth. You know, they're connected from your eye to your teeth. When I get knocked down around 2, I thought he knocked my tooth out. It felt like my tooth came out. It felt that. Yeah. Now that was one of my always nightmares. I was always what's the word? Vain. I was always vain. I was a vain person.
Yes, sir.
So getting my teeth knocked out was like a nightmare for me. Luckily, I've never gotten a tooth knocked out. Yeah. When I was young, I was very vain. You know, my hair, my eyebrows. You remember? I had that kind of image at that time. You know. Now it's like whatever. But at that time, it was like.
Everything.
So I feel like my tooth got knocked out. And I'm like, this MFer just knocked my tooth out. I wasn't actually hurt. It was a good knockdown. It was a solid shot. When I got up, I had my legs under me. I remember I was bouncing to get to 8. I was bouncing so Smoker Steel. I had my legs under me. But in my mind, I'm like, this MFer just knocked my tooth out. I can't believe this, man, you know? So I remember telling myself, just get through the round. He's going to get a 10-8 anyway, no matter what I do now. So just don't even waste energy and get him on the next round, you know? So I just box on him. Barely do anything the rest of the round. Just try to move around, just box normal. I go back to the corner and I think that I'm gonna see my tooth in my mouthpiece when they take it out. I don't see my tooth. So I'm like, where the hell's my tooth, man? So I start doing that. Exactly. So I'm doing that and I feel the pinch on my tongue. So I'm like, all right, my tooth is there. It's weird. What am I feeling? If I knew you could break your orb bone, I might overthink it. Luckily, I didn't know. Now every round it's swelling. At the end of the next round, I think it's that round or the end of the next round. I reach in with a right hand, and he throws a double hook. Whop, whop, on the reach. And bro, this guy hits so damn hard. Even though like a double hook as he's backing up, it was like boom, boom. The second one, dude, I kid you not, it was like when if you smash 2 rocks together, it's like, or like if I felt that in my face. Like, and I was like, what the hell was that? But in my mind, I guess I made a face because he goes, I touched it, and he goes, hurts, and I was like, wow. I was like, and I tried to hit him. I tried to like bait him. I tried to throw like a 1-2 at him. But looking back now, those were the signs of the break. It probably cracked on the knockdown with the nerve.
Yeah.
And then when he did that, it probably shifted when he hit him with the double hook. Now, bro, but now we got the whole fight in front of us, bro. Now it's swelling. He's hitting on top
promise
of it.
you, I remember that moment. You reach in with the right hand, and at this point, I'm always rooting for the underdog. I'm always rooting. Big Miguel Cotto fan at this point, but because I saw the way the first and the second round went, I said, okay, this is gonna be a quick night. Paulie, get it together. And you reach in with the right hand, and he counters you. And I was like, Paulie, what are you doing?
Yeah, because I was anxious. I had been knocked down.
Yeah, I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, this ain't gonna go much longer. You know,
and that was the thing. I think it was also the nerves, the big arena, the guard. And that's why I talk about Frank Martin tonight. You know, he hasn't been in that kind of fight yet. Gervonta's a big name with big lights, big crowds. You know, you've beaten some good fighters. I had beaten some decent fighters, but that night, you know, was a different kind of graduation. You know, and you feel a little bit more pressure to perform. You know,
Puerto Rico and New York.
So, and again, that's why it was different with the Sinchenko fight where I had no pressure to perform because they're gonna rob me anyway. Just box, just do you. Every fight was like that, but especially that first one, it's like you gotta perform. This is everything you work for. Everything you work for your whole life. You know, you can't go get knocked out in 2 rounds. You know, I told myself get it together too after I got out. You know what I mean? As a matter of fact, knock my tooth out, get it together. You can't be out of it. You know. And I mean,
so you hear that?
I hear that must have been the bone like shifting.
And his response to you kind of pulled you away from what you heard. I kind of feel that way.
Yeah, and also
it hurts, and it's like
also I don't know where that came from. I heard the because in your face you hear it in your ears. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't realize that it was this bone. I think that benefited me because I would have realized my elbow bone is broken. I might have overthought it. I remember being like in the corner. I can breathe out of my nose. My nose ain't broke. I can open my mouth. My jaw ain't broke. I'm good. 25 years old and you're desperate and you're 35. No. 35. 25 in that moment. I'm like, I'm good. My jaw's not broke. My nose good. All right, I'm good. Something's wrong, but it can't be that bad. You know what I mean? It's just that this guy hits really hard. That's what I was thinking. You know what I mean? He does hit really hard, but it was because he broke my face. You know. But that was that. Yeah, and that was
wow.
But it was an experience
so
in itself.
At what point does, is that just after the fight everybody said, fractured jaw, he fought through?
No, even during the fight, there was a Paulie chant in the middle of the fight, so it motivated me, spurred me on, it spurred me to stay in there as well. Inside the garden was real loud, man. It was a baptism by fire kind of night.
Yeah, man.
I went to the hospital after, and when they told me. Then they told me your orbital bone is fractured, but they couldn't do surgery that night because it's too swollen, so I had to wait a week. I had to see a specialist, and so I ended up getting the surgery in Massachusetts.
After the fact is when the news comes out that you had the fracture. Obviously now we know over the bone. A lot of people said fracture.
I didn't know that night. I mean, I knew that night, but I didn't know in the ring. But I think it's better because I think if I would have known, maybe I would have overthought it.
This is kind of how I always tell people. I said boxing is the one sport where we have to literally ignore the number one thing that we are all born with, unless you actually have you're born with the issue, self-preservation. In football, I got something. We take you out for a couple plays. Basketball, the list goes on. Boxing is the only sport where you have to ignore what you feel.
But that's because if you don't, the preservation of your career is done. People will criticize you. People will take it away from you. So your entire career, which for most fighters, and including me, was my entire value at that point in my life. My entire confidence came from that at that point. I can't lose this. You can't take it away from me.
Did the Hall of Fame was the Hall of Fame ever a goal for you?
Yeah, it was one of the check marks. It was. Remember, it was the early check marks of mine. It was.
When you look at everything that you've done as a fighter, and you guys, hopefully, y'all got some good.
Even one of the checks was pound for pound, everything. You know what I mean? I had all kinds of goals.
Listen, man, we all,
But you reach some, you don't some. But if you reach, you're constantly reaching, you're gonna reach many.
I feel like I might have 2 goals that I didn't accomplish. You know what I mean? But it kind of is what it is.
But in the meantime, look at what you accomplished because you set so many bars so high. Setting the bar high is important. You'll never reach the stars, but you'll always reach for them. If you reach for the stars, you'll never touch them.
But to the point of that question, I know most of us, we look at ourselves. Hey, I'm a Hall of Famer. I'm this. I'm that. But when you really break down what you've done, you came into this game at 16 years old as a straight up green guy who had some trouble outside of the ring. You know what I mean? But
No,
when you consider
it gave me
everything that
value,
you've done,
it gave me self-esteem,
Yeah.
it gave me a living, it gave
Yeah.
me financial stability, it gave me. I am still a high school dropout with no GED. I still have no formal education. You know what I'm
okay.
saying? So you know, I like to study. I like to do my own reading. I like to learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I know I don't have the
Yeah.
formal education about it. But it's funny because a lot of these things that I enjoy doing on my own. You know,
Yeah.
like I enjoy learning. I enjoy reading. I enjoy things like that.
I enjoy getting to have this conversation with you. I kind of, along the way of us being with Pro Box. Pro Box together. I've been able to kind of, hear and learn some things about you. I truly do feel like, considering everything that you've done in this sport, how you got here and how you got out of it. I mean,
yeah,
it's
absolutely.
It's a realistic
I don't
possibility.
think about my boxing career much. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes up like these kind of conversations, then I started getting like the memories and they come.
Same with me.
But I don't think I remember I met in the middle of my boxing career. I'm a big soccer fan. I met Eric Cantona. Eric Cantona was a famous soccer player in the '90s. And he was French, but he played in the English League for Manchester United. And I met him at an MLS game in Jersey. He was in the box next to the box they gave me. And I started talking to him, and I didn't recognize him at first. He had a beard and everything. And he was like a big guy,
Yeah.
And I was like, "You ever think about, everything back then? You He goes, "No."
Yeah.
He goes, I was like, "Why?" I was like, "Really?" He
Yeah.
goes, "No, I just enjoy, but that's it."
Yeah.
And I'm like. I was like, how? At that point, it was fun. I was in my mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
I was like, why? He goes, you live in the past, you live depressed. He goes, you have to look forward. You always have to set new goals, So,
wow.
So it's, it is true. If people live in the past, tend to, nostalgia's cool, but
Yeah.
you got to also have new goals and set.
Was broadcasting a go?
No, I never thought about it.
Yeah.
I just fell into it. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's so weird. I never thought about broadcasting. I mean, I'm glad it came my way. Don't get me wrong, because it gives me that stability. It gives me that
job. Yeah.
But it was never in my mind, bro. I was in such a different state of mind. When I thought I was gonna be a boxer, I thought I was gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna be Sugar Ray Leonard. I'm gonna have so much money that I'm gonna retire off and live the rest of my life off it. That was. Again, but I'm glad I kind of was that naive because it made me work so hard.
Of course.
And it made me want to manifest it so badly, that I was able to accomplish a lot because of this crazy idea I had in my head of what it was going to be,
Yeah.
But so I never had broadcasting in my mind because I didn't think I would ever need broadcasting, I didn't. And then it just started coming my way a little bit.
When it came your way, did you appreciate it immediately or did it take time?
When it came my way, it was like a new goal. I liked it.
Okay.
It was like, man, this is kind of cool. I remember first people telling me, "Oh, you should be a broadcaster. The way you speak at press conferences is great,"
Yeah.
And I was like, I was still in my 20s, so retirement's the last thing on my mind.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that's something you do after retirement anyway. And also, where do you even start?
Yeah.
I've never known how to look for a career job like that. Where would you even start? So I was like, and then just picked up more momentum, and then it just fell in my lap. The Showtime thing fell in my lap. Yeah,
niche sport need niche people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I mean, for regardless of the disagreements I had with Showtime and it ended badly, there's still with a gratefulness to that too.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because don't get me wrong. It's not like, I mean, how can I word this? It's pros and cons, right? Because just because somebody raises you doesn't mean they get to abuse you, right?
Absolutely.
But just because they financially support you.
Absolutely.
But if somebody that abuses you and financially supported you and raised you, you still have to have some kind of respect or thankfulness for that, because otherwise you'd have been in the street, right? So it's kind of like that with Showtime in some ways. Like, I felt very disrespected. I felt like they abused their power. I felt like I don't think I was wrong.
Yeah.
But I also got to make my name in broadcasting there through that job and through their opportunity they gave me and the support they gave me. And I learned with them because I got to work with the best.
Yeah.
I got to work with the best people. And in terms of the most qualified people. And I think it prepared me for the rest to keep doing that in the future.
I've wanted to do commentary practically my whole life. 10, 11 years old watching boxing. I remember back then thinking like, I'm gonna do this, and this is how I'm gonna say it, this is how I'm gonna do it. When you started doing Showtime, people were raving about you. I'm like, he cool. I'm like, where did they get a load of me?
Yeah.
But
I always felt you were one of those guys that could do it too. You know, there's some guys that'll see you.
But I would hear you, and I would literally like at the end of the night, fights are done, all that kind of stuff, and I'm like in my bed because I feel like you're in the way of me getting where I want to be.
Well, that's the thing, right? You realize that I didn't. It came to me when I didn't really care about it.
Yeah.
So I never got to appreciate it until later.
Yeah.
So you had the goal, so you were already
Absolutely.
looking at how you could get in there.
I would be laying around, I'd be laying down, and this random thought came to me like, damn, Paulie tore it up tonight.
But I couldn't appreciate
He's getting
it.
better.
I couldn't appreciate it until I was in there.
Yeah.
I remember Jim Gray. Jim Gray was a good mentor when I was there. Man. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
And I remember he told me, because I would mess up here, mess up there. He goes, don't mess this up, Paulie. I'm like, I got you. He goes, no, seriously. He goes, there's not a lot of these jobs in the business.
Yeah.
And that's when it hit me.
Uh-huh.
Not a lot of these jobs in the business.
Yes, sir.
There's only a certain amount of networks.
Yeah.
At that time, it was only HBO, Showtime, and ESPN Friday Night Fights. Now there's a little more, but I was like, you know what, he's right, bro.
Yeah.
Shoot. There's probably guys that are good that can't do it because there's no openings. Damn. You know, so Jim always had some smart stuff to say, man.
Yeah.
Jim was a guy I'm glad I got to know at Showtime, because from the outside looking in, he gives tough interviews, man. Sometimes you think but when you get to know him, you're like, man, he gave me some gems to keep in mind.
Me too. Listen, before we get out of here, I got to ask you, this love and admiration that you've had for boxing since you're about 16, 17 years old. I know because of the way boxing's orchestrated, the way it moves, even now as more of a outsider looking into it, I know definitely as a fighter, you more than likely had some roller coaster emotional rides with boxing, but overall, the state of boxing where it's at right now, you still love it?
I do have a passion for boxing, but I have also, let me how I put this. There's more important things now. Boxing is important to me in some aspects, and I'll always be grateful to it in some aspects. But I feel like also, it's weird because I'm a wild guy and people don't really see me this way a lot of times, but I feel like a relationship with God is the most important thing.
Amen.
And I sometimes question whether boxing and God go together. And it's something in my conscience, you know. And there's mixed feelings about it. You know what I'm saying?
Want to have a conversation now or offline?
It's up to you, man.
Wow. Well, then I'll just say this. When we did pro box, and I brought up the story about Bathsheba, David, and
because I've been studying a lot. I'm talking a lot.
I was very apprehensive to talk about it because where I came from in terms of when I started watching this kind of stuff, there were do's and don'ts to doing it. And I think that some of those do's are no longer do's, and some of those don'ts are no longer don'ts.
See, I never followed that time. I just went, and then I found out later whether you do or you don't. You know?
That's funny. So I was really apprehensive to bring that story up as it pertains to what Ryan is going through right now, Ryan Garcia. And when you chimed in and piggybacked off of what I said and added more to it, like you gave me encouragement that I can be myself even more than I've been myself. I've always been transparent with everybody. Everybody knows that I'm a Christian. Everybody knows that I'm at church 3 times a week. People know those things, but sometimes I'm always a little apprehensive because of, you know, just the way things can be twisted. And,
I think that's
overanalyzed.
I think that's a natural sometimes doubt. I think it's also something the devil puts in us.
Absolutely.
Jesus said, you know, in the last 2 verses of Matthew, go on making disciples, people of all the nations. And so he opened it up to everybody, not just the Jews. And he said, you know, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So to me, that's, you know, the not being shy about talking about it, I think is important, because that's a command. It wasn't an advice. It was a command. So if you are a follower of Jesus, I think that, you know, you do that. You you become less apprehensive about speaking about it because you know that's,
Yeah.
you know, it's the guy you're supposed to be speaking about. So that's the command.
Yes, sir.
You know, there are commands and there's rules, there's advice. There's
Yeah.
that was a command.
That was
If you
a
look at it,
command.
that's a command. So,
Yeah.
so I, you know, I if it comes up, you know, or sometimes I find an opportunity, you know, I bring it up. There's a lot of things I have to work on. I mean, again, I battle with my own conscience. Like, I don't know if boxing and God mix. I don't. I see I've gotten both aspects of it from different people.
Yeah.
And so there's a conscience thing there too,
Yeah.
because like I said, I don't have any high school diploma.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
all I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
so
yeah.
it's something I in my own private time I battle myself with it.
With that being said, I'm gonna say this, and then to the point of what you just said. This is the only thing you know. You believe in God. You believe that God created you to do everything that you've done to this point. If boxing got you to some places that you would not have gotten to,
Yeah.
God is the one that created you.
Yeah. No,
It coincides. You just have to.
In that way,
Yeah.
in that way, you are correct. In
Yeah.
that way, I see that point of view.
Yeah.
But then I look at 1 John 5:19, and the whole world is in the power of the devil. Right? So is this a temptation of the devil because the devil controls the world society, or is it God?
Well, you're only tempted by the things that you allow to tempt you.
Yeah.
You know.
But that's what I'm saying. So therefore,
And the Bible also says that
is this tempting?
God won't tempt you beyond your measure. You know.
But is boxing the temptation? That's is the violent. Psalms 11:5 says God detests violence. When Peter took out the sword when Jesus was being arrested, he said, "Put the sword away."
He did.
For those that live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah.
That was his last lesson, if you really think about it, because he was being arrested. One of his last lessons, right? I mean, he didn't have. Well, actually, there's certain lessons he did with actions by not beating up the Pharisees when they slapped him and stuff, because he could have probably killed them too, but he didn't, right? So, but by allowing himself to be arrested, it was more so, you know. But then again, Peter had the sword on him, and Jesus had never acknowledged it before. Because obviously, that was if Peter had a sword on him. So there's two ways to look at it, right? That's why again, my conscience goes back and forth because Peter had the sword on him to do that. So and Jesus had never acknowledged that before, obviously. And for Peter to have that sword on him, then it probably wasn't the only time he had the sword on him. But yet, when he used it, that was the lesson. So maybe Jesus was just waiting for the moment to tell him, or is the sword not, you know, is there a time for it, which is why he had it on him to begin with? It's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's a whole conversation.
It's lovely. So that being said, though, man, I thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Leave it at. And what's the goals now? Where do the goals? Now?
Again, I mean, for me, it's a relationship with God. Relationship with God, and what does that entail? I think in order to have a proper relationship with God, you gotta know His Word, the Bible, very well, personally. And because you know, God no longer talks to people like He talked to the ancient prophets. So the Word of God is how you get God's personality down. I think if you read the Bible enough, as I've started to a lot, and you start to get a gauge of God's personality. You know what I mean? Like what makes Him tick, because God has a personality too. You know, and so you here's the thing, right? The Bible says Abraham was God's friend, right? In order to be somebody's friend, you don't want to disappoint them, right?
Sure.
So therefore, there's a certain standard He wants us to live by. Also, there's a great gratuity, a thankfulness. You know, He gave us life, so you don't want to, you know, just disregard it and live, you know, outside of those means, outside of those morals, right? So I mean, but again, temptations, this and that. So it's something that I think about a lot more at this point.
I truly do think, man, I hope you guys enjoyed this interview, and I know that I'm proud of you. I'm proud to know you. I'm happy to get to know you even more beyond this, but even, again, working with you on Pro Box, just being a, you know, you have one perception of somebody based on an experience or based on what you've seen.
Of course.
And that's my thing with this right here. I want to give people a experience that will give them like, oh, that's what
I think
is, you know?
most people, the image I have and the person I am is sometimes very separate, you know.
Hey,
and
listen, that ain't their problem, is it?
No.
Thank you, Paulie Malignaggi.
Thanks, champ.
This
Appreciate
is the PorterWay.
Gentlemen from the Microsoft Theater here in downtown Los Angeles, Brought to you by Shawn Porter Promotions.